Sarianides, and as always, I'm joined by my partner, the one, the only, the legend of legends, Kevin Stone. Kevin, how are you this evening?
If I'm a legend, what are you?
I'm not a legend, man. I don't listen. You're the one that was told on Saturday you should be running for governor. Well, actually, Friday
So
and Saturday.
I would
So
say that 2 days.
over a 2 day span, the great John DiBiase told Kevin Stone he should be running for governor. So there you go. I mean, what a time to be alive. Kevin Stone running for governor. NFL free agency starts. Boston College kicks off spring ball tomorrow. Great time to be a football fan. And that's where I want to start off as a jumping off point. Of course, today was the unofficial beginning of NFL free agency. The window to negotiate opened at noon. NFL free agency technically doesn't begin until Wednesday at 4 p.m. when the new league year begins, but nonetheless, plenty of signings today, including the New England Patriots, who made a couple of signings. We saw more Patriots or former Patriots now leave than more guys coming in, and we're going to break it all down. But before we do that, I just want to get your thoughts, overall thoughts on today. Before we went live, you said to me you thought that this was a disappointing day. Thought that that was a bit of a classic Kevin Stone overreaction. I'll tell you why. But let us know, what were your thoughts on today, day one of NFL free agency?
So I believe I said slow, not disappointing. It has been slow, but I guess relative to last year, right? Like after last
Yeah,
year, people are going
you
to
can't
expect,
compare it to last year in 2021,
sure, completely
right?
understandable. And no matter what, fans are going to do that. I was expecting something a little bit bigger early on. Now look, they addressed edge right away, right out of the gate within what 5 minutes of free agency starting. You got a guy who you saw twice last year and who had some success against you. So I didn't mind that. And then Reggie Gilliam, obviously we've seen him against the Patriots for years now. They didn't have a true fullback last year, so that might have been a Josh McDaniels, purchase at the free agency store. But yeah, you still hope you get a receiver. You still hope you now need some linebacker help with the release of Jelani Tavai. So you're going to need a replacement for Darian Lowe. So there's now more stuff to add to the list than you already had coming in. So it's been a slow first day, and I think fans always expect something right away. Again, it's hard after last year since they made such a big splash so early. But I do think you're going to hear some stuff. It's just not as quickly as people, including me, might have liked.
Yeah, I think, look, let's start off with the guys that left, and then we'll get into Draymond Jones and Reggie Gilliam. As far as the guys that left, you mentioned they cut Jelani Tavai. I was a little surprised by that. I thought it was a possibility, and we talked about the fact that they were going to make a couple of veteran moves here that not necessarily that weren't expected, but to be honest, are somewhat surprising. The Garrett Bradbury move we thought could happen. It ultimately did. They trade him to the Bears. I didn't see them outright releasing Jelani Tavai or Christian Ellis for that matter. They might have come to Ellis and asked for some type of a restructure, but I didn't see a Jelani Tavai release. That surprised me, especially because he's been kind of a staple around here the last 5 years. He's a guy that has been a productive player on the field, leader off the field. I thought that from a cultural standpoint, he was a really good fit in terms of what Mike Vrabel wanted to do. I was a little surprised by that move to cut him. As far as the guys that left the building today for Darian Lowe, not a surprise. He may actually have a shot at starting at left tackle for the 49ers if they decide to move on from Trent Williams, if they can't figure out their contract situation with him. The one that surprised me was Kyrus Tonga. I thought that there was a pretty good chance he would be back. I'm surprised that not only did he walk out the door, but that he got 3 years and 21 million from the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, Andrew Callahan and Doug Kyde put out a report from the combine last week, and they talked about the fact that the Patriots and Tonga were negotiating in good faith. It looked like they almost had a deal. The deal ended up falling apart. He didn't end up re-signing. Free agency opens today. He hits the market. He's gone. Were you surprised that Kyrus Tonga isn't back?
Yeah, and for the same reason with all those guys that you mentioned, they're all locker room guys. And especially, there was so much talk last year about the culture. But on the flip side of that, in that last press conference, Mike Vrabel said it. We're always looking to get younger and faster. they clearly did that, or they took the first steps towards doing that today in all those positions, specifically on defense. So I think it shows two things. One, Vrabel understands the business more than anybody. If you remember, I believe he was traded after that '07 season. I think that was a Matt Castle deal.
No, no, it was 2 years after that. It was 2009.
Okay, but either way, it was still relatively close to one of the greatest seasons ever. So he gets the business part more than anybody. But I think it also shows the hometown and discount thing.
He was
Isn't
also
there yet.
traded partly because of a contract squabble.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just, and he had been outspoken. And I think that
Sure.
that rubbed Belichick the wrong way. And I think he ultimately decided to move on.
Yeah, no, but I mean, point is just the business aspect. That's a guy who's going to understand it when he's talking to a player. But just there's no hometown discount yet. Like you could have been negotiating in good faith with Tonga. Ultimately, he said, "Well, f this. I'm still leaving. The culture was nice and that was fun, but see you later. Money still matters. So that's going to be something you have to watch out for too. Don't just think guys are going to sign here because you have one good season.
No, and I don't think that that's the case at all. I think ultimately what it comes down to is when you have an opportunity to get paid, you take the money. When the bag comes your
100%.
way, you don't drop it, you take it. And I think if you're Kairos Tonga, even if they were negotiating in good faith early on, you have an opportunity to go somewhere else. And by the way, he's going to the Kansas City Chiefs. Aside from last year, they've been the best franchise in the NFL the last 6 years. So it's not like he's going to a rebuilding situation where you can look at it and say, he's just going there because he got the bag. He's going to a franchise that could very easily be back in the Super Bowl contention next year. Patrick Mahomes comes back healthy and he's ready to go. So he's going to a pretty good situation. But I think ultimately what this comes down to is money does matter. And I think what it proves is Mike Vrabel is not going to build a football team simply by running it back with guys and feeling good about the guys he has and thinking, well, we have enough in the room to get it done. They don't have enough. You didn't win the Super Bowl. Had they won the Super Bowl, maybe you do bring back some of these guys. But ultimately, they clearly did not have enough. They came up short in the Super Bowl. They need to upgrade the roster. And I think ultimately what this will come down to is what do they do tomorrow and beyond, right? If you're taking it at face value in terms of what they did today, DreMont Jones is a nice signing. I'm a big fan of his. I know our good friend John Lyons is also a big fan of his. I love that signing. Pretty good market deal at 39.5. He's a guy that had 27 quarterback hits last year. That would have led the Patriots by about 8 or 9 hits. I think ultimately what it comes down to is he's a guy that's going to be a Swiss Army knife type of piece. In certain packages, he's going to play edge or closed end. In other packages, he's going to kick inside. There'll be times where he'll play off the ball and pressure from depth. They're going to be able to do a lot of different things with him. And the Reggie Gilliam signing is interesting to me. I mean, I thought you're not just paying for the fullback here, you're also paying for a guy who played 77% of his snaps last year on special teams. But I do think ultimately, yes, on the surface, when you look at who left the building and you look at who's come into the building, it's only day one. On the surface, they have not done enough, but I'm sure business is going to pick up here. And let's not forget Jalen Hawkins, Caleb Chason, the two guys we thought they needed to resign that were their free agents, they're still on the board. They haven't signed anywhere. So as time goes on here, if they continue to be on the board, you're going to have an opportunity to potentially bring those guys back. The longer they stay on the market, the better the odds are that you can bring them back. And I think, honestly, Kevin, if I were the Patriots, I'd want both of those guys back. Look, I said it all last season. Even with Landry and Chason, they were one edge short. I think you got that guy in DreMont Jones. If you can get Caleb Chason back with Landry, great. Now, that gives you flexibility with pick 31 in next month's NFL draft. But if Caleb Chason walks, now pick 31, once again, could potentially be an edge guy. So these next couple of days are going to be interesting to watch because I think that the Patriots are in a position where they're going to look to continue to upgrade the roster, but the message is clear here. They are not going to go above what they perceive to be market value and overspend for guys.
Two things on Jones real quick. One's a question. He's going to be on his fifth team in 7 years. Any concern?
No, not at all. That's today's NFL. He is not an attitude guy. He's not a locker room problem guy. The bottom line is early on in his career, he was a tweener. He was a defensive tackle end type guy. I think systemically he hadn't found the right fit. But once he started to become a more productive pass rusher and had a more defined role, I think that he got more opportunity, and as he got more opportunity, he ultimately got this opportunity, which is his payday.
And I'm pretty sure he has 37 and a half sacks in 7 years. The guy he can get the job done. So it might end up being an underrated signing. I think fans just are looking for a name early on. He might end up being one of your better signings when this whole period ends.
Oh, he could end up being your top signing for sure, because as it stands right now, your best shot at upgrading a wide receiver or replacing Stephon Diggs is more than likely going to happen in a trade. It doesn't look like you're going to accomplish that in free agency. So yes, he may end up being their biggest signing. Now, again, it remains to be seen if they bring back Chase on, if they bring back Hawkins. But at the end of the day, you know what? This isn't a chop liver signing. This is a really good signing. And this is a guy who's going to come in and make an impact. And that's what you want here. Look, they were bottom third in the league in sacks last year. In fact, they tied with the Dallas Cowboys for the least sacks in the league. So you need to figure out a way to get to the quarterback, because let's face it, you're going to see Josh Allen twice a year. You're going to see Patrick Mahomes next season. You're going to see Justin Herbert next season. You're going potentially could see Aaron Rodgers next season. You're going to continue to see elite level quarterbacks. The better quarterbacks in the league are in the AFC. You need to position yourself to be able to rush the passer on a more consistent basis. They couldn't do it last year. It kind of caught up with them towards the tail end of the season. They got away with it, but their inability to rush the passer ultimately proved to be a problem in the Super Bowl. But all of that being said, I think he's a terrific signing. I'll take it a step further. I think he's one of the best signings of the day. That's not hyperbole. That's not me pumping the Patriots tires. That is a fact. I feel he's one of the best signings of the day. And again, I think you got him at a really, really good deal, a fair market value deal, which I think is vitally important to an organization like the Patriots.
100%. And I'm also curious now, where do they think they can go in the draft? Like, do you still think offensive line is top priority, or do you still go edge rusher if you keep that pick at 31? I think either
I
way.
think it comes down to what do you do with free agency the rest of this week. If you can get
Yeah.
Caleb on Chase on back, I don't necessarily think you need to go edge at 31, because now you have Landry back, you add Jones, you re-sign Chase on. There's three pass rushers there. We know they like Elijah Ponder. You can also add another veteran down the road there, or you can take an edge. It's deep enough that you can take an edge early in day two if you wanted to add another guy into that mix. But if, let's say, they bring back Caleb on Chase on, I don't think that you need to go edge rusher at 31. Now, look, I think a lot of what happens with Chase on is going to depend on what the market is the next couple of days. He could very well come off the board tonight. He could very well come off the board tomorrow morning. The bottom line is he's a guy that's going to command anywhere from 12 to $15 million. You're going to have to pay him the same contract in essence you gave DreMont Jones. Harold Landry's on a similar contract. The question is, can the Patriots stomach having three edge guys making that kind of money? I think the chances of Caleb Chase on coming back are slim to none unless he takes less money and he takes either a 1 year deal, or he takes the 3 year deal, but he comes in under market. I don't see it happening. It could. It could. He hasn't signed yet, and the longer he sits on the market, the higher the chances are that the Patriots can bring him back and that he would be willing to take, quote, under market. But if he's sitting there by this time tomorrow night, I think the Patriots have a legitimate shot at bringing him back. But I think he will be one of the better free agents that are left on the board. I think he's going to have a lot of suitors here over the course of the next 12 to 24 hours.
Well, I was going to say, you have to hope that they at least talked it out and said, come back to us before you sign anywhere.
Well, I mean, look, you say that with every free agent. You say to them, look,
Right.
we like you, we want you back, but we understand you need to test the market. Go out there, test the market. If you don't get what you like, come back to us and we'll see what we can do. You
Yeah.
do that with every free agent, right? Provided you want them back. In some instances,
Right.
teams don't want guys back, so they don't necessarily extend that free agency olive branch. But I think in the case of Caleb on Chase on, Jalen Hawkins, I would not be surprised if the Patriots said, hey, listen, go out there, shop yourself around, Have your agent do his job and try to get you a contract. If you can't get that contract, then you know what? Come back to us and we'll see where we're at financially and whether or not we can make the numbers you want work. I mean, again, I don't think it's going to work. Realistically speaking, when we looked at Kayvon Chason, I think we all felt 3 years, 45 million with probably about 30, 35 million guaranteed. That seemed to be the sweet spot for him and a contract. Some people around here were talking 20 million. That's ludicrous. That was never going to happen. But that's, in my opinion, if let's say that's the benchmark deal, that's what he's looking for, he's not going to get it here. He's going to have to get it somewhere else. And he may ultimately say, you know what? I'll come back on another 1 year deal, prove that I'm just as good as I was last year, maybe try to get to 8.5, 9.5, even 10 sacks, and then he hits the market again next offseason. But I think for things to get to that point, his market would have to be dry, completely dry, in which case the Patriots can swoop in and make it happen. I don't think that's going to be the case. I still think he and his agent are going to hold out for that 12 to $15 million a year offer. And if that's the case, I think he's gone. I don't think he's here. Now, I think Jalen Hawkins is a different situation. I think he's more likely to be back. Patriots could be slow playing it with him, see what the market is. A couple of safeties have come off the market today. Of course, you have the Minka Fitzpatrick trade. Potentially, they could be looking at that situation and saying, all right, let's see what the market bears out. Let's see what he can get on the open market. If he can't get the deal he wants in the open market, come back to us and we'll see what we can do for you. Again, I think he's more likely to resign than Chason.
I could see them going to the draft in that position. I think you need to get younger there regardless of whether you sign him back or not. So I wouldn't be surprised if we get one, maybe even two.
Well, I mean, again, you're not going to draft two safeties. You're not. That's not going to happen.
No,
It's not
so
a position where you take two guys in one draft.
I meant one, maybe two total the offseason.
Oh, you could add another veteran. There's going to be other veterans out there. Guys could also come free after June 1st. I mean, you always have options to upgrade the roster, even into training camp. It's not something that, you know what I mean? Like, it's not as if they don't sign a guy this week and that's it. It's over. But again, if you had your druthers, I think Jalen Hawkins is the guy you want to sign. You know what he is. He's been a good player for you both as a starter and as a special teams player. He's the locker room leader. He's a good guy. You want guys like that back. I think he's a guy you got to make a push to keep. And again, the longer he sits on the market, the less likely it is that he gets that big offer, the more likely it is that you can sign him back. Ken Matthias checks in. He says, underwhelming start for the Patriots at the beginning of free agency. Now the team has to look via trade to get a wide receiver. Thoughts? I disagree with the underwhelming piece. I don't think it's underwhelming at all. I think people need to pump the brakes and calm the hell down. It's not underwhelming. You signed a good player in DreMont Jones. You added a guy in Gilliam who's going to play on all your special teams. You know the Patriots are a multiple offense. They're going to want to run the football. They need a true fullback. They made it through last year with Jack Westover, who they are bringing back, but he's not a true fullback. He's a third tight end, more like a move you guy. So, yes, I know on the surface, DreMont Jones, Reggie Gilliam, Patriot fans aren't going to get moist over that, but I think at the end of the day, they're good players, and they're going to fit culturally, and they're going to fit schematically. And let's give it time here. Again, it's only day one. It's not even day one of free agency. Technically, day one of free agency is Wednesday. So people need to relax, pump the brakes, Matthias. It's not that dire.
First of all, can we say how dumb it is that this just isn't day one of free agency? It's the stupidest thing ever. It's just so dumb. But
well, I mean, it's dumb in that they can negotiate. I think what's dumb about it is the fact that nobody can keep their mouth shut. That's the problem. You know what I mean? It'd be 100% different if you can negotiate with teams and then that's kept quiet until Wednesday and then we find out where everybody signed. But loose lips sink ships, and unfortunately, people can't keep quiet, so stuff gets out.
That's my point. At this point, just say it is what it is. But one guy you keep hearing
when the new league year begins, my friend.
One guy has been a lot of smoke around. At least I think it's been Mark Daniels who at least first put it out there. You would know him well, Romeo Doubs. Would you want him?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's going
He's
to
not a one
replace
though.
Stephon Diggs from a production standpoint, and I think he's
He's not a one.
probably a third or fourth option if you strike out in the trade market. I mean, look, Alec Pierce gets what, 114, 116 million from the Colts.
Yeah.
I'm not paying Alec Pierce 4 years, 116 million. I'm just not doing that.
No, not for
That
47
I'm
catches.
so glad that they walked away from that. Okay, because the production just does not warrant 29 million a year, man. It
I
just
agree.
doesn't.
Yeah, I know. I
So
agree.
I, look, if you're going to pay a guy top 10 at his position, you got to do a hell of a lot better than he did last year. What do you have? 47 catches and I think 6 touchdowns. That's not worth 30 million a year. I mean,
No,
we have to stop throwing money around like as if it's Halloween candy in sports because a lot of dudes who don't deserve to get that kind of a bag in all sports now are getting big bags.
I believe he's now the highest paid wide receiver, free agent wide receiver ever. He had 47 catches last year. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
stop. Just no.
Yeah,
That's
and
what I want.
again, as frustrating as it is for Patriots fans, one thing we can say about Mike Vrabel, and this is where he has a little bit of Bill Belichick in him, they really don't want to set the market unless it's a guy that they drafted and developed. And that's why I think I could see them paying Gonzalez ultimately, even though this regime didn't draft him, Belichick's did, but they also recognize he's elite at his position. I could see them being willing to set the market with him, but they are not going to be that organization that's going to go out and set the market with someone else's free agents.
No, look at Tyler Lindenbaum today. That was absurd. There was no way they were going to ever do that either. So, again, there's the high expectations from last year are going to hurt them. It is what it is from a fan's perspective, but I hope they aren't setting the market. That's ultimately going to cost you in the long run.
Ken checks back in. He says, "Do you both think the Patriots should have signed a receiver and kept Diggs at a lower cost as a number two receiver?" Well, no, because you have to pay. You would have had to pay him that $6 million roster bonus. They didn't want to do that. It wasn't even about the potential that he could make 26 million in 2026. It was more about they had to basically shit or get off the pot, and they decided to get off the pot, and they cleaned up and they left. And I think at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. They didn't want to pay him that roster bonus. Wasn't about what they potentially could pay him. And look, let's not totally 100% close the door on Stephon Diggs. He certainly could come back. It would not shock me in the least bit if he did. But he's going to have to come back at a much, much more affordable number than the one he would have had if they held on to him. And look, you could sign somebody like a Romeo Dobbs and bring a Diggs back down the road. You could do that. Here's the thing: when you look at their options outside of Diggs, we all universally agree Alec Pierce got overpaid. Patriots did the right thing not paying him that kind of money. I'm not giving up a first and a second or a first and a third for AJ Brown either. I know that's been out there. That's great. I'm not giving Philadelphia that either. So now you have to look at this and say, okay, so how do they upgrade a wide receiver? Could you potentially entice Jacksonville to trade you Brian Thomas for pick 31? That's a possibility. Maybe if Arizona decides, you know what, Marvin Harrison doesn't fit here, Marvin Harrison Jr., we might want to move on. That could be a possibility. I think those two players are probably going to require you trading the 31st pick to get either one of them. But I can also see it. Look, Vrabel said this at the end of the season. They're going to build through the draft. I can see them focusing on defense, focusing on edge rusher and free agency, and coming back at 31 and taking someone like Tennessee's Chris Brazzell and saying, you know what? We love the 6'4.5", 6'5", 215, 220 pounds. He's a true X receiver. He ran a 4.39 at the combine. You know what? Let's bring him in. Let's develop him, and let's hope he turns into our Alshon Jeffrey or a big X receiver that produces even maybe your AJ Brown. So they could go that avenue as well. But I do think you bring up a good point in that now that you've gone back to the Super Bowl, expectations are high. And when you have a day like this, fans are typically going to be disappointed.
Yeah, so with receiver, I still love AJ Brown. I don't want to give up. Um,
I'm not giving up a first round pick for AJ Brown. I'm not even entertaining the conversation. In my view, if I'm Elliot Wolf, Ryan Cowden, Mike Vrabel, the conversation starts with a third round pick. If Philadelphia tells me to go shit in a hat, then I go find a hat and I do my business in it. I move on. I'm not giving up pick 31 for AJ Brown. He's 29. He's gonna be 30 next season. He carries a big cap number the next 2 years. Bigger receivers tend to slow down, and when they slow down, that's it. It's over. They are not productive anymore. Whereas F receivers, Z receivers, even slot receivers, they tend to hold on and be productive a little bit longer. I'm not paying for at best 2 good years of AJ Brown. I'm just not doing it.
No, I hear
I'm
you.
not paying that price for him.
I hear you, and I sort of think I agree with you on the age part, but I do just worry that you're 2 years away from having to pay Drake May. I'd like to at least nudge him a little bit and show him you're going to help him for the future. But
Well,
I would love
if
to,
you're going to pay him, you have to clear the decks. You can't have
yeah,
other big
true.
contracts on the books. You may end up having Gonzalez on a big contract on the books, but you're not going to be able to have too many more of those if you want to pay him. And listen, that's the sad reality of today's NFL.
Yeah,
Okay. If you don't win on your quarterback's first contract, especially if he's good, it gets harder to win with him. That's why them not winning it this year hurts, because if you win it this year, now you won one with him on his rookie deal. That's huge, but you didn't. And next offseason, you could potentially be talking extension with him, and that's going to be 55, 60, even possibly 65 million a year. And once you get into that territory where they eat up a certain percentage of your cap, it gets harder to build a championship team.
yeah. No, that's the thing I'm worried about. But I'd love to. We talked about Sky Bell last week. I'd love for them to go get Sky Bell from UConn or really anybody at this point. They need young receivers. We keep saying it for 20 years now.
They have young receivers, though. What do you mean they
So
need young receivers? You have Kyle Williams. You have Efton Chisholm. They brought both of them in. Demario Douglas is going into his 4th year.
so I
Keyshawn
was gonna
Booty, 4th year. I mean,
You
these
might
aren't
not have either
grizzled
of those guys,
veterans.
though. You might be
What?
losing both those guys in a year or two. That's the thing. So you might
What
have
do
to
you mean?
restock the cupboard.
But right. Well, Douglas and Booty are free agents after next year. So
True.
I don't.
But
My point is this: we can't keep saying they need young receivers. They have young receivers. The whole
well,
point is you need an established guy that can lead the room, which is what Diggs did last year.
I guess I mean more so that true number one. If you're ever going to draft it, you need to draft it soon. Otherwise, you're just going to keep digging for free agents the whole time. And we've talked about having to build that core. You ultimately need a young core receiver. I do think for May, if he is going to be here long term, but I could see them mostly going through the draft to receiver at this point. I really could.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Scott checks in. Thanks for checking in, Scott. Good to hear from you. He says Diggs did a good job. Hope he comes back. Would be a good Patriot story. Again, he very well could come back.
So
And yes,
on
he did
that,
do a good job. If you get away from the numbers, the 85 catches, just over 1,000 yards, 4 touchdowns, those aren't eye-popping numbers, and they're certainly not numbers worthy of 26 million a year. But you can't deny that he did a really good job in the locker room, in the meeting room. He was the leader of that receiving corps, and he was productive enough on the field that you got a lot out of him. But if you're the Patriots, you're talking about a guy who's going to be 33 during the season. Again, they didn't want to give him that $6 million roster bonus, and they certainly weren't going to venture into that $26 million a year neighborhood. That's what he would have gotten. I don't think they would have gone there.
no way at 33. But look, I'm worried about losing that leadership. He was really good. I said it from OTAs on. It was evident what he was doing for those young guys. But no, not at 33. No, just you can't do it. I will. But just real quick question: allowing him or giving him the heads up as early as they did. Obviously, he was in good fit, so he can go start. Kind of trying to figure out the market. If he was to come back, does that play a factor? Because I think it could. The fact that they did that.
Does what play a factor?
The fact that they gave him that early heads up and didn't wait till today. They gave him an extra.
That depends on what their relationship is privately and if that means anything to him.
Yeah.
I don't know. With all due respect to Stephon Diggs, how loyal is he? He's had 7 kids in a year and a half with 7 different women.
Not wrong.
I think he's. I'm obviously.
No, it's a good
I think
point.
he's definitely more football loyal than he is relationship loyal.
Correct.
I think we can all agree on that. So, I mean, and again, I'm not trying to shit on the guy, but
No, it's a
I
good
don't know how
point.
much it's going to matter to him. And if there was ever a position where loyalty doesn't matter and doing right by a guy may not add up and matter, it's wide receiver. So,
Yeah, no. Fair.
Ken Matthias checks back in. He says, Brown not worth a first, knee problems. Yeah, it's going to start to break down. It's going to happen. Kevin Mahoney checks in. Gonzalez will be $110 million contract. Try again, Kevin. He's going to be north of that.
More.
I think you're looking at about $125, maybe even $130. He's going to probably command about $1.5 million, maybe $2 million a year more than Trent McDuffie. He's going to set the market. Now the question is, are the Patriots, even with their own guy, are they going to be willing to reset the market? It's not something that traditionally this organization has done under the Kraft ownership. Mark Dondero from 98.5 put this out there today, and I normally don't agree with these types of sentiments. He said he would trade him because he doesn't believe that the Patriots are going to want to set the market with him. And he also doesn't think they should be looking to set the market. I think that if you get a guy like that, though, that can be a core guy, you're obviously more likely to set the market with the player. But I thought a lot about it tonight, man, and I would not be shocked if they did pull the trigger on a trade, especially in light of the haul that the Jets got back for Sauce Gardner, especially in light of the haul that the Chiefs got back for Trent McDuffie. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that the Patriots pull the trigger on a Christian Gonzalez trade at some point this offseason, especially if they start having the extension conversation and it's not going well.
So nothing surprises me at this point. We've obviously seen, everything there is to see in sports, but I do think there's something to be said for keeping the homegrown guy, and I do think that matters in the locker room and to younger players coming into the league or younger players that are now established in the league that are going to become free agents down the road. Um, Again, I just think there's something to be said for locking that guy up and making sure he's yours for a long time. He's that next Ty Law. They've sort of bounced around from guys to after Asante Samuel. I think you had Darrell Revis and a Stephon Gilmore, but you haven't had that homegrown guy that's yours, that lockdown guy for a long time. So while nothing would surprise me, I think you have to get it done, not only for on the field, but just for what it would mean sort of to the locker room as well.
Scott checks back in. Hey guys, any word on Brady blocking the Raiders trade or fake news? I wouldn't be surprised if he did.
I
It's
believe
so
it.
hard with Brady because on the one hand, you want to go after him and be like, clearly he's got an axe to grind. Something's wrong here. This isn't right. Then you got to look at it somewhat objectively and say, well, he is an owner of a rival team in the conference. Why would you want to make the Patriots better? But then the counter argument to that would be, well, then you made the Ravens better. So I think this whole Brady Patriot dynamic is very interesting to me. Going back to the Super Bowl with him not throwing his support behind them during Super Bowl week, and then now this, where there's smoke, there's fire. I really believe this. And I believe that there is something to the report that came out yesterday that he potentially could have kiboshed a Max Crosby to the Patriots trade.
I'm a huge Brady guy, so I actually thought about this a lot today because I knew we were going to talk about it. I can't find it in myself to ever hate the guy, but it's getting weird, man. Like, you had the statue, you had the retirement night, and I know that night we both thought everything was dead and buried. That's probably naive on my part. I don't know if you still believe that, but I don't.
No.
So what
I
the
think
hell?
him and Belichick are probably in a pretty good place.
I agree.
I think there's something very off about the way he's been acting. And I know he's a broadcaster and I know he's an owner. So,
Nothing to do with it
yes,
right
that
now.
could be why he's been acting the way he's been acting. But if this story, I don't want to call it a report, but if this story is true, that he blocked a Max Crosby trade to the Patriots or an attempted trade, you have to wonder, is it simply because he's a minority owner of the Raiders, or does he legitimately have an axe to grind? I do have a theory. If he has an axe to grind, part of it tells me that that axe to grind could be that he wasn't offered a piece of ownership here. And I think that could be something that sticks in his craw. And I'm not saying he's pissed that he's part owner of the Raiders, although despite the fact that they had a really good day and spent a bunch of money, they're still the Raiders and they're probably going to find a way to screw it up. But I've often wondered, is he reacting this way towards the Patriots because ultimately he wasn't given a piece of ownership?
So I think so, first of all, but I'll add another theory onto your theory that I heard today. If we go back and when Brady was signing, and he went to Tampa, and we heard the story of him talking about him saying, "You're sticking with that guy," and we found out it was Tennessee sticking with Ryan Tannehill. Vrabel was running the show there at the time, so maybe there's something to that as well. And he's just petty as hell, which we know he is. He's been petty.
Well, you can't be an uber competitor like that if you're not petty.
100%.
You've
Right.
got, because these are alphas. These are people that they
Yep.
find motivation in everything. And
Yeah.
I'm sure that when he left here and Tennessee spurned him for Ryan Tannehill, I'm sure that pissed him off. Now, do I think this factors into that? No. I think what factors into him not wanting him here is he knows Mike Vrabel's a good football coach. And he knows that as long as
That's true.
Mike Vrabel is here, the Patriots are going to be competitive. He doesn't want to give them even more ammunition to stay competitive. So
Well, and do you,
I think part of it is that he's part owner of the Raiders, but I do think there's some kind of an axe to grind there with him and the Patriots.
I think it's a little bit of everything, and I also think it might be he doesn't want to be perceived as helping the Patriots out if they do have
Yeah.
continued success. You can,
Yeah.
that's never going to go away.
Yeah, he doesn't want to be like Kevin McHale when he
Yeah,
traded
right.
Garnett to the Celtics,
Right,
which was
right.
just blatant him supporting
They
the team he
hated it,
played
right.
for.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rock checks in. Rock, good to hear from you, man. Cole Strange, 2 years, 13 million. Strange world we're
Oh.
living in when Cole gets 13 million over 2 years. The assumption is he's going to step in at left guard and replace Zion Johnson, who signed with the Cleveland Browns today. Zion Johnson, of course, is a former Boston College Eagle, and we'll be talking Boston College football here momentarily. Scott checks back in, shows good faith on the Pats' part. I think it is positive. I'm assuming Scott is talking about the Diggs situation. He says that Super Bowl would have been a blowout if Gonzo didn't have the game he did. Yeah, completely shut down Jackson Smith and Jigba. He erased him. He was a non-factor. And that's the thing if you're the Patriots, man. You go back and you look at that performance in the Super Bowl, it's going to be hard to justify to your fan base. And again, I get it. Coaches and general managers don't necessarily care what the fans think at times, but it's going to be hard to justify trading him to your fan base. Everybody, the entire world saw what he did against Jackson Smith and Jigba in the Super Bowl. The so-called best receiver in the league, which I don't think he is, but the so-called best receiver in the league was completely erased by Christian Gonzalez. All Gonzalez and his team have to do is point to that game and say, if you don't think I'm the best or one of the best corners in the league, then trade me.
I mean, look, I've said it before. We were in that end zone. The amount of ground that he made up on that deep pass breakup, I've never seen anything like it. So that's what I'm saying. It's really hard to convince, like you said, the fan base to not keep a homegrown guy like that.
Yeah. Which is why I think ultimately they'll choose to re-sign him, and they'll figure it out. I think he'll be here. Ken checks back in. What do you guys think the team will do a tight end behind Henry? Well, Mike Vrabel did tell us at the Combine a couple weeks ago that he liked the tight end position and that he felt that there was some talent there in the draft. I tend to disagree. I don't think it's deep. After you get past Kenyon Sadiq, I think it's very wide open. He'll be the only first-round tight end in the draft. Of course, if he falls to them at 31, he could be an option. It'll be interesting to see what they do there. Of course, Austin Hooper left today, goes back to the Atlanta Falcons, the team that originally drafted him. It reunites him with Kevin Stefanski. He goes back on a 1-year, $3.25 million deal. So they have an opening at the second tight end spot. I suspect that somebody like Chigagwanku or there'll be a couple of guys out there that they'll keep tabs on, possibly a Dallas Goedert. They'll try to address it in free agency and the draft. I feel it's a position where you'll see them sign a veteran, but also bring in another young tight end. Let's see here. Scott checks back in 6 Super Bowls. He should be 1, 2, 3% owner of the Pats if he had that interest. Or if he had that Linda interest, I think he said.
It means kinda.
Yeah, kind of interest, yes. I agree. I think we all agree. I think that the two most disappointing things for me in my life as a Patriots fan and now member of the media is him leaving and going to Tampa, and the Crafts not giving him a piece of the team, not giving him a stake in ownership, especially in light of the fact that they sold off like 10% last year. So I don't understand. At the time when Kraft was asked about it, he said it's a family business. Come on, man. This is a guy who you say is like another one of your sons. you call him family. He's Tommy to you, and you don't give him a piece of the pie, even a sliver. You know what that would have done if he came back here and was part owner of the Patriots? I mean, he's already canonized and immortalized in this market. Can you imagine how much more he would be idolized if he were part owner of the Patriots? I think from a PR standpoint, it was a missed opportunity by the Kraft family.
Well, if nothing else, you wouldn't have needed the 4 ceremonies in 2.5 years. It's insane.
Well, wait a minute. Well, let's see. So it was when he came back for Philadelphia.
That
He
one,
came
the
back
Hall
on
of
June
Fame.
12th. Hall of Fame. Well, that was June 12th.
Yep, the
And
speech.
then
I
the
mean,
statue.
the statue. So sorry, 3. There's
Yeah.
3 in 2
I
years.
don't remember a fourth ceremony.
Look, I love Brady as much as anybody. That was a little much. No, 100% though, and I think ultimately, look, I think John Elway, but I think Broncos, right? Like even after his playing career, that should have been Brady. Like he should have been. You should have always seen him suit and tie in the box, next to Kraft if he wasn't doing Fox. Like he should have been here forever as a Patriot, and ultimately, now I do think there is a little bit of a grudge being held.
Yep. Scott says he gave so much of the Pats money, 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 heart and soul. He should be the mayor of Boston. Either of you disagree? No, I don't. I think he should be part owner of the Patriots, and I definitely think he should be the mayor of Boston. Can't get any worse than what we have right now. So there you go. There's my political rant for the day.
He should be the Dave. He should be what David Ortiz is to the Red Sox. He's still around, still the face of the franchise. Like maybe not in everything, but he's
What
in
do
all the
you think he should be sitting there going, "Duh, Jets
yeah,
suck.
right.
Duh,
Like
Jets suck."
you know what I mean? Though, like he should be Mr. Patriot still, and it sucks that he's not.
Scott says in response to Ken's comment on tight end behind Henry, let's bring back Ben Coates. Well, Scott, here's the problem. I don't think Stone or Matthias knew who Ben Coates is,
I
so I'm not sure that
100% do.
You know who Ben Coates was?
Of course, I had his jersey. He
What
was on
number
that.
was he?
He was on that first 90s.
Well, no, hold on. What number was he?
87. Come on, dude. Stop it.
What was his nickname? I'll be impressed if you get this.
Damn.
Eat it. You got stumped.
No, but that
Ben Winter Coates.
Oh, from Chris Berman.
Yeah, Ben
Okay.
Winter Coates.
No, that
I do a pretty good Chris Berman.
it's actually not bad.
Eric's sleeping with the enemy. Nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. Anyway, go ahead.
That's
If this keeps going, I'm going to bust out my Chris Collinsworth.
Chris Berman's actually a great guy. I got to meet him this year. But no, that 96 team, I love that team. He was the man.
How old were you in 96 when they made their run before they ran into what could be the greatest team of all time, the 96 Packers?
839. So the first team I really kind of rooted for.
Yep. So you were a big Keith Byers guy, Ben Coates,
David
Sam
Meggett,
Gash,
Curtis Martin,
Bruce
Armstrong,
Bledsoe,
David
Sean
Baldog,
Jefferson, Terry Glenn.
I can go down that entire roster. Chris Slade, Ted Johnson. Come on.
Come on. All right. Relax there, Patriots historian. Come on. Oh. Half the time we do a show, you can't remember what the current who was on the current Patriots, but all of a sudden you're Mr. Patriots Hall of Fame. Oh, the 96 Patriots.
You get me going on. You get me going on 90 Sports, man. We can go for a while. Sam Gash was the man.
No, we can't, because inevitably you're going to forget something, and then that's going to sidetrack you, and then the show will end.
Fair.
Again, you have the memory of an 80-year-old. Let's see here. Scott says in response to Ken's comments, we already read that one. I think I'm putting John to sleep. He should have been the next Bobby Orr.
Well, you hate the Bruins, so that's irrelevant to you.
Well, I don't get the Bobby Orr reference, though. He didn't finish his career here. He played for the Chicago Blackhawks.
And
then he was forced to retire because of knee injuries.
And he does have a statue, so actually I don't get it either.
I mean, I'm guessing that's where Scott's going with it. So he says, that is a good Berman. Thanks. Yeah. Nobody circles the wagons. All right. Anything else on the Patriots, Stone? You got anything else? What can we expect the rest of this week? Give us a piece of information that we're not going to get anywhere else. This is a Kevin Stone special. Enlighten us. Give us the name of somebody that we don't see coming. You hate when I do this to you. That we don't see coming that the Patriots could either sign or trade for.
David Njoku.
I like that.
I
I
really
like
do
that.
think you can't go another year with Hunter Henry as sort of just year one. I do think he's sort of, yeah, he's been very good and very reliable, but you kind of need that next guy in line.
Yeah, I think Njoku's a very good possibility. Obviously, you have the Vrabel Cleveland connection, so I think he's I definitely think he's a possibility. Scott checks back in. I messed up that booby booby or comment. You messed this one up too, dude. Booby or is he related to Booby Miles from Friday Night Lights? Or wait, is that Friday? Yeah, the Permian Panthers. Booby Miles.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Tore up his knee, good old Booby Miles. And then you, of course, before Booby Miles, you had arguably the greatest defenseman of all time in NHL history, Booby Orr. So Scott checks back in. He says, David Ahuhu, David Njoku, former Cleveland Brown great, Scott. That's who Stone's talking about. I think that would be a nice signing for them.
They're
Now,
really good
I
in the
do
red
think
zone.
Njoku is more of a name than he is a player. I think he's underachieved in his career. But to your point, I think he can be a nice compliment to Henry.
I just think he's really good in the red zone, and you still need a guy down there.
Yeah, I agree. Tight end, Scott. David Njoku as a tight end. He would be the second tight end for the Patriots. He would be their U. Of course, they have Hunter Henry playing the Y. I think Njoku would be a good sign. I think, look, I don't think you're going to see a trade this week. You never know. But for people that are out there clamoring for them to solve the wide receiver problem, I don't think you're going to see a trade. What I do think you could see, though, here in the next 24 hours is them sign an offensive lineman. So you could see, as far as we know, and I haven't been on X in over an hour, I would love to see them get in on Elijah Vera Tucker. I know the injury history there is concerning, but when he was healthy for the Jets, he was pretty good. If you miss on an Elijah Vera Tucker, even though it goes against my beliefs in free agency, maybe you look at bringing in either a Wyatt Teller or a Joel Bitonio, former Cleveland Browns. Both guys played really well for Cleveland. Bring in one of those guys. And I'm going to give you a name. Rasheed Walker. And that was a name that came up a couple of weeks ago. I know that Elliott Wolf dismissed it at the combine, but he's a guy that could potentially slide inside and play some guard for you as well. So I like the Njoku signing as a possibility, but I want to see them sign an offensive lineman here in the next 24 hours. They need to add another body up front.
Oh, they don't have a choice. If anything, I would have liked to see that first today before they went and got Jones. But yeah, no, I'm with you. They need one, at least two in free agency.
Scott says, distant cousin of Mike Verbal. Mike Verbal. Stone, can you do the Tiffany Haddish Mike Verbal announcement? How do you do that
No,
impression? Can you give it a
no,
shot for us?
no.
Why?
I don't feel like it.
What a wuss. Ken Matthias checks in. John, Green Bay question. What was your reaction to Malik Willis signing with the Dolphins? Good move or overpay by Miami? Well, it's a good move in light of the fact that they're going to owe Tua Tagovailoa $99 million to not play for them. I mean, look, Matt LaFleur, for all his faults as a coach, and he has plenty of them, and he pisses me off as a Packers fan. But the thing is, he does know how to coach and develop quarterbacks. He's really good at that, as he should be. He comes from the Shanahan McVay tree. I'm not sure Malik Willis is going to have the same success. He's going to play in the same offense under Bobby Slowick in Miami for old friend Jeff Hafley. I just don't see the same success. He's going to have some nice pieces to work with, Jalen Waddle, Devon Achane. I just don't ultimately see the same level of success. And that's not a knock on Slowick. I just think LaFleur really knows how to coach quarterbacks and take advantage of their skill set in his offense. Now, in regards to the Dolphins, I mean, you sign him. You hope he's your guy for the next 3 years and beyond. You hope you catch lightning in a bottle like the Seahawks did with Sam Darnold. But the reality is the Dolphins are going to suck, and they're going to be playing for the number one pick. They're going to be one of 5 teams that I think are going to be in the race all season long for that number one pick, and they know that. And the modus operandi for a lot of those teams in 2026 is stay competitive. But the reality is you want to strike that balance between being competitive and still having a shot at a top 5 pick in what's going to be a loaded 2027 draft class. I I don't think it's going to matter, Ken. I think ultimately the Dolphins are going to suck. So it's not
Or
going to matter. Yeah, the one thing I will say, I think you'll get more consistent quarterback play potentially with Malik Willis.
were you surprised to Halfley went out and spent that money like that, knowing that they should probably just, go young in the draft and sort of take it on the chin this year? Or is that one of those
No,
things
no, you need a quarterback, man.
yeah.
You need a quarterback. Quinn Ewers was never going to be their quarterback. Quinn Ewers is not a starting quarterback in this league. People that were sitting there floating the idea that he was going to compete for a job were being disingenuous a-holes. He wasn't competing for anything. He is not a starting quarterback in this league. He could be a nice spot starter backup, but he'll never be a starting quarterback in this league that's going to lead a franchise. So the people that were pushing that narrative after the season are morons. Rock says, I came on late. What's the plan for swing tackle? I wouldn't want to draft that with a high pick. Well, I mean, they could run it back with Thayer Munford. I thought he did a really good job for them last year.
That's your guy.
That's my guy. Me and Thayer talk Ohio State football all the time. Which, by the way, and I know that people are going to say, "Oh, here we go." Them talking about the locker room and trying to sound cool. We saw some guys leave that building today that we're going to miss. That were good guys to talk to. For me, I know both of us enjoyed talking to Jelani Tavai. He's a straight shooter, really good dude. I enjoyed my 1 year with Kairos Tonga, really good dude. And man, I'm gonna miss Velo, man. 3 years of talking to Vidarian Lowe, just a real good dude, great to talk to, always honest, gave you good answers, didn't hide when he didn't play well. He was upfront and honest about it. I hope we don't lose Jayhawk. I hope Hawkins comes back because he's another good dude that's easy to talk to in that locker room.
Garrett Bradbury was one of the nicest guys I've ever met in my life.
Yeah.
He was fantastic to talk to. I'll never forget after the AFC Championship coming up to me, "Hey, you need me? What do you need? I got you anything you need, man." When he easily could have been pounding beers in the corner. So he was awesome. I met Tavai at a military pickleball event when we were first getting on this beat back in 2021, just kind of, trying to show that we'd go to anything. And he could not have been nicer and formed a relationship with him. So yeah, just to echo your sentiments, man, that's the shitty part about doing this is you generally get to know the guys and you form relationships with them. So we get to see that it really is a business as well.
It is. But because we get to see them in a different light than the
Correct.
fans do. We get to see them, we get to know them one-on-one. We get to see them off the field. It's just different. And, it's the shitty part of the business. And I don't want to sound like a moron.
No, it's true though.
But when you find guys that are good guys that are willing to give you their time, it's worth its weight in gold because it's content and you appreciate them for it. And they appreciate, and don't think for 1 minute, by the way, and you know this, they read what people write about them. They do. And when you're good to them and you don't go out and bash them and write clickbait bullshit, they appreciate that. And you tend to get more out of them that way when you do it straight up and honest.
So I will say it's always easy for guys to talk when they're winning as much as they did this year. But a guy like Vidarian Lowe, a guy like Tavai,
those guys were talking when they were 4-13.
That's what I mean. Yeah. So
that's what you're gonna miss.
Yeah, 100%.
Yep. Those guys were not afraid to share their thoughts when the team wasn't good. And I would say the same thing about Anthony Jennings. Anthony's going to talk to you whether the team is struggling or winning, and he's going to give you straight up content. It's what I appreciated about Keon White. He's not going to give you some token bullshit answer, which we appreciate. But getting back to your question, Rock, I think Thayer Munford reunion is in the works. I think that could possibly happen. I don't see them going with an offensive tackle in the first round unless somebody falls to them and they're too good a value to pass up. They could end up drafting someone late day 2, early day 3, though, that could potentially fill this role. Another name to keep an eye on that we haven't talked about enough as far as that left guard spot is concerned is Ben Brown. He's on the roster. And I know he's their swing guy inside at center and guard. He can play all 3 of those positions, but I would not be surprised. They did extend him during the season. I would not be surprised if he gets a shot to start for them at left guard.
You can make the argument that when him and Lowe were on the field last year, that unit was better when Mo Campbell was out. So I'd love to have him back, and I know he's back, but I'd love to have him in that fold as a starter, frankly. He knows the offense. I keep talking about continuity as well. You're losing a lot by losing Garrett Bradbury. So I would like to see Brown end up having a bigger role.
Scott checks back into the Dolphins parting ways with their quarterback. Yes, they cut him today. They're going to have to eat $99 million, and he signed a 1-year deal with the Atlanta Falcons. So there you go. One man's trash is another's treasure. Uh, Rock checks back in. Any talk about Gibbons? Almost need him back now. Yeah, and I
Good
think, you
question.
know what, Rock, I think that there's probably a good chance that if he stays on the market another day or two, I think there's a good chance you do see him back. I think there's mutual interest there. I talked to one scout who told me that he thinks that Gibbons will have a decent market. When I asked him about how he thought some of the Patriots could fare in free agency, he told me he thought that Gibbons could have a decent market, but that ultimately, if he had his preference, he feels that Gibbons would want to come back. So I would not be surprised if you see a reunion with Jack Gibbons as well.
Yeah, I think that's a guy you can, bring back cheap money, and you do still keep some of that culture.
Fits the scheme, knows
Yeah,
the scheme. He's played for Vrabel in Tennessee. He's played for him here.
right.
That
And
has value in the NFL.
yeah, and he's one of those, again, the cheaper guys, but one of those locker room guys who can carry that over, who clearly, carried Vrabel's message as well as anybody on that team. So I could see him being back easily.
Yep. You are watching / listening to the New England Football Show. I'm your host, John Sarianides. As always, I'm joined by my partner, Kevin Stone, talking Patriots free agency. And now we're going to shift gears here and talk some college football. Boston College kicks off spring practice tomorrow morning at 9:15. And of course, Kevin, you are going to be there bright and early at the Heights. It's supposed to be a beautiful day. Heck, I mean, I don't think they'll be outside because there's still snow on the ground. But if we didn't have the winter we had, they probably would have been outside. But it'll be a nice day for the start of spring practice. Of course, it's well documented. This is an important spring for Bill O'Brien and this football program. O'Brien made several staff changes this offseason. Eagles also brought in over 30 new players. But talking to some of the Eagles assistant coaches over the course of the last couple of weeks, man, that you can just sense that there's a lot of excitement about the new coaches that are coming in. There's a lot of excitement about some of the new talent that has come in and coaching those guys. Vibes are high right now at the Heights. Question is, can they keep those vibes going throughout spring ball? It all starts tomorrow.
Look, I think everybody in the program has a chip on their shoulder. I've said this for a while now, ever since the portal class came out, and I think you agree for the most part. It's a lot of guys that have proven they can play football, but just haven't gotten a chance to play a lot of football. Like there's some big names with big programs, guys. Sorry, let me back up. Guys from big programs coming in like Georgia, like Michigan State, like Alabama, like Florida. They were just lower on the depth chart guys. So this is an entire team, literally an entire team of guys basically that has something to prove. Even the guys that are coming back, and you have about 35 players coming back, including a leader like KP Price. Um, so I don't think they're going to be as bad as people think. Now, as you know, I'm always sold pretty easily on how things look in spring ball and training camp. So as soon as VJ Wilkins has a 60-yard touchdown tomorrow, I'm going to say they're going 10-2.
Right.
But in all seriousness, like there's a lot of talent that is back that we just didn't see last year. I mentioned VJ Wilkins. He was the fastest player on the field at times during camp last season. Just had some trouble, kind of getting up to speed in terms of the playbook. So now it's another guy, year 2, year 3, really in college. So there's a lot of players that we're going to learn about. We've said this for weeks. It's an entirely new learning process for us, but it is for the coaching staff as well. There's an entirely new staff here for the most part. We don't even know if there's an offensive coordinator. Should find out tomorrow. I think you and I both agree should and probably is Bill O'Brien. But there's a new offensive analyst. There's a new defensive coordinator. There's new offensive line coach. Like there's a lot. There's a new running backs coach in Mike Hart. Like there's a lot of questions across the board. And the exciting part about tomorrow is you start to get at least a few answers. We're not going to know a ton until training camp itself, but every position is up for grabs. Like it's a fun time to cover BC. Yeah, they went 2-10, but there's a lot going on there right now. So I can't wait for tomorrow. As much as anybody, I'm there every single day. So, or every single day that's open.
Well, I know you'll remind us of that.
Hey,
nonstop.
Somebody has to.
Right.
Especially
nobody has to. That's
especially the coverage that they get in this market. No, they should be a fun team to cover this year.
Listen, I didn't bring it up for you to get your dander up. So Slow your roll, Tootsie Roll.
They should be a fun team to cover, though. They really should. And I do think Mason McKenzie is going to surprise the people
Well,
at quarterback.
can you just don't get ahead of yourself? I was just about to ask you, how do you think the quarterback position is going to shake out in the spring? I don't think they're going to name a starter until fall camp ends, to be honest with you, or at some point during fall camp. But how do you think the quarterback competition is going to play out this spring?
I think it's Mason McKenzie. I really do. It's just, and that's not to say that the other
So
guys.
you don't think Grayson Wilson has a shot at this job?
So I
Because
mean,
I disagree with you. I think he does.
so I'm not saying he doesn't have a shot. I just ultimately think it's going to be Mason. I feel like they're as high on him as anybody in that room. But no, it's competition. Of course, anybody can win it.
I think Femi Babalolo is going to have a shot too.
So look, I think ultimately Mason wins it, but I think it's as open as it's been in 4 years here, if not more. Like going back to the Phil Djokovic days, I think it's that open. But I'm just saying I ultimately think Mason wins it. But I'm with you. I think it's wide ass open to start the year.
Yeah, I don't. I think they're going to go into fall camp having not named a starter.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how long they wait into fall camp until they do it remains to be seen. Yeah. I think Mason McKenzie is the favorite, and talking to people, they're really high on him and they really like him, and the talk around the program is that he gives them an added dimension that they haven't had. But Grayson Wilson is a pretty good system fit, and he's young, and he's talented, plus arm talent. Good pocket mobility, can reset the pocket, work multiple reads, get the ball out on time. He's got some strengths. He's inexperienced, and the decision making needs to be better when you watch him on tape. But I think Mason McKenzie's going to be the favorite. I think he's going to get first team snaps starting tomorrow. But I really truly believe that they're going to divvy up those first team reps throughout the spring, and they're going to go into fall camp without a defined starter. I think ultimately they're going to make that decision during fall camp. But yes, Mason McKenzie is the prohibitive favorite, but it's kind of the same thing down at UConn, right? Is it Jake Merklinger? Is it Caleb Osborne? I mean, is it Tucker McDonald? So I think that, I wrote a piece about this last week about the amount of quarterback competitions that we're going to have in spring ball around here. I think this is the number one quarterback competition to watch. As much as you want to say that it's a fait accompli that it's Mason McKenzie, I don't think you can say that. I think it's going to be a legitimate competition. And I know Boston College fans are going to say, what the hell, another competition? Yes, you're going to get another competition. I think you're going to have some quarterback controversy going into the season. And if it is Mason McKenzie, he's going to have to play really well out of the gate to keep the job. If he's not playing well out of the gate or he struggles, I think it's going to be a short turnaround to the next guy. So I definitely think it's a full-fledged competition, though.
And I think the interesting thing, not only at QB, but everywhere, but particularly at quarterback, is the fact that they're all portal guys. Everybody came here knowing that a job was not guaranteed. I think that's huge for the competition. Everybody's on notice early on. You don't always get that at the college level. Hell, even the last few years, the quarterback, or at least the guy you thought was a quarterback, whether it was Tommy, whether it was Grayson, whether it was Emmett Moorhead, those guys went into the season believing they were number one. There's nobody going in believing they're one.
I mean, Djokovic aside, Emmett Moorhead's always going to be the one that surprises me, and it's a reminder.
Remember,
nothing is given. I mean,
he went to ACC Media Day.
Right, he looked the part.
Yep.
They sent him to ACC Media Day. They presented him as the starter, and halfway through the first game, he was benched.
Yeah, so that's what I mean. I think the competition here. No matter what happens, you're not going to have guys snipping at each other from behind or anything like that. You signed here from the portal knowing that you didn't have a job. That's rare in today's age. So I think that competition is going to be fantastic.
Yeah, it's not as rare as you think. Probably half the guys that sign at places know they're going to have to compete to play. Competition's a thing. It's overstated. It's overstated a lot of times at football, but just because you were brought in and your NIL has 7 digits next to it doesn't mean that you're guaranteed anything, especially guys that aren't brought in necessarily on big NIL contracts. The guys that are obviously guaranteed to play, but I think that guys have to compete more than you think. Rock says, realistically, what does OB have to do to save his job? Is it wins? Is it momentum? What do you think he has to do, Stone?
Bare minimum bowl game. Best case scenario, 8-9 wins. I think if you miss
Yeah.
a bowl game, he's done.
Yeah, I agree. Now, they fired both basketball coaches, right? But
Correct.
Bill O'Brien, with all due respect to those fine folks, Bill O'Brien is a much bigger name than those people. But I agree with you. I think at minimum 6-6 bowl game, you win it. You go 7-6. People are going to feel better about themselves, about the direction the program is in. That's the minimum to me. If you win 8 or 9 games, then he probably buys himself another 2 years at
I was just saying,
least.
might get an extension.
Right. I bet you he probably does get an extension.
Yeah.
But at minimum, you got to be bowl eligible. You got to be 6-6. Get the program back to that place. And I think what they're scheduling, I think it's challenging. I think that that's a fair place. I know Boston College fans, again, they're going to come out of the woodwork in August and be passionate about their team. But I think that that's a fair place. I think 6-6, 7-5 is a realistic expectation for this program. 8 or 9 wins. I think you're asking for too much. Remember, you're bringing in 30 new players. You need to take these 15 practices coming up that you're going to have now and get them caught up to speed and get them acclimated to playing at Boston College. And then fall camp's going to be about getting them ready for the season and identifying your depth and identifying your starting quarterback. So the guys that are going to play for you and that are going to be central figures in your success this fall, you're going to identify a lot of those guys within these 15 practices now.
100%. That's why a guy like, I bring up a VJ Wilkins like last year. You have some guys that come out of the woodwork. Reed Harris, there were 2 or 3 years ago now, that he was the superstar of spring ball. If you remember that spring game he had, I think it was their last one. He had 3 touchdowns in that game. He looked at, he was a superstar. Now he just went and transferred. It might end up being an NFL draft pick in a year or two. So this is the time of year where you kind of get those guys who you didn't really know anything about that sort of burst onto the scene. So this is the most fun time of year when it comes to just sort of learning about teams.
What 3 areas are you going to be watching this spring? For me, it's quarterback, offensive line, defensive line. What areas are you going to be watching?
Um, Quarterback, offensive line, wide receiver. You need production. You just lost Lewis Bond. Jaden Skeet is still there. People forget about him. That's a kid who's really, really talented. Just hasn't really stayed healthy during his career while he's been there. Then you have transfer receivers all over the place. So receiver for me is huge. You need production from that room. You haven't got enough of it over the years. And I'll add on tight end. I know you and I are both really high on Kalen Chazinski. He took the job in spring ball last year and ran away with it. They haven't had a true sort of threat at tight end in a long time.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Franklin was much better for them last year than people thought.
So that's fair. I always underestimated him and undersold him. So thank you for that. But in terms of the future, Jazinski feels like the guy there at tight end. So those four for me are huge. I know it's all offense, but linebacker is always a question at BC since the Luke Kuechly days. In the secondary, they have a ton back. So I'm not really worried about that defense yet.
And switching gears to UConn, of course, they kicked off spring ball last Tuesday. The Jason Candle era is underway in stores. Early reports are pretty good. The quarterback competition looks pretty good. A lot of the new skill guys are getting acclimated to being at UConn, and a lot of them played for Candle at Toledo, so they know how he practices and they know the system, or at least parts of the system. It is a new system in that Nunzio Campanile, the new offensive coordinator, and Ryan Manilak, their new defensive coordinator, are guys that Candle has not worked with in the past. So, in essence, both the offense and the defense are going to be new to a lot of the guys. As we mentioned last week, UConn brought in 58 guys in the portal. That's crazy. And that's a reminder to the people that compare it to NFL free agency. It's not even close. You don't turn your roster over like that in the NFL ever. You don't turn your roster over like that in the NFL over a 5-year period. Never mind, I don't know, 3 months. But you spoke to Jason Candle on Friday down at the Big New England Football Clinic in Newport. Share some thoughts with us on that. You wrote a really good piece on that. Share some thoughts on what Coach Candle had to say about spring ball so far and being at UConn.
No nonsense, very straightforward, very, very nice guy, but you can see why he's sort of a football coach. Like, it's hard to explain. and I think you'll get this. Just the way he presents himself screams football coach. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's just again, it's hard to kind of put into words unless you meet him. But I actually asked him about all of that turnover and how important it is for guys to gel now in spring ball. And he said, look, everything's going to be evaluated from a week to week basis. He goes, we need to know what works and what doesn't every single week that we're together. So when we come back for regular training camp, we have a plan put together that the guys are okay with. And I thought that was sort of interesting. Like, yeah, head coach, and again, you know this, they're always going to sort of want to form something or form a plan that fits their team. But I found it interesting that he's willing to evaluate every single day between now and let's call it June. He said that's really what it's going to be the evaluation period to see kind of what works and what doesn't from what he's bringing over from Toledo. So very detail oriented. I again, he screams football coach to me. I think the vision he has is very, very clear. He wants to continue the success that Jim Moore has had. He's like, look, obviously it's a new staff and we have new ideas, but with the success of all of the programs at UConn, not just basketball, and we've talked about this, that sort of boosts football, and they
Mhm.
want to make sure they're holding up their end of the bargain as well. So he's not shying away from 10, 11 wins if UConn can get it. And I asked him real quick about the lack of a conference too. He said, "Look, that's easy in terms of recruiting. If we're doing what we're supposed to do, that's going to come. So that's really not a concern of his either, which could have been a reason to not take the job, but he didn't see it as an issue. So I think they really have a perfect fit there, but obviously we're not going to know until we start seeing results on the field.
And of course, the Huskies will continue spring ball this week before they go on spring break. Some other programs that are kicking off spring ball. Bryant kicked off spring ball on Thursday. It's a big year for Chris Merritt and his squad as well. 45 new faces on the Bulldogs roster, but the good news is quarterback Brennan Myers back. UMass is going to be kicking off spring practices here in the next couple of weeks. Joe Harris-Simiak and his staff have brought in a terrific recruiting class, especially when it comes to true freshmen. One of the better recruiting classes in program history. I wrote about that today. So it'll be interesting to see how many of those guys that got on campus and how they get them acclimated. Of course, they're going to be playing their spring game on April 25th. And you got a couple of other programs that are kicking off spring ball here. Well, actually, all of the programs are going to be kicking off spring ball here in the next couple of weeks. But within the next week, Sacred Heart, who's going into their first year in the CAA, they're kicking off spring practices this week, coming off a nice season, a nice final season as an independent. Mark Knopfrey squad will look to bounce back, to build some momentum, I should say, not bounce back. They bounced back last year, but to build some momentum going into the CAA. Merrimack also kicks off spring ball next week on March 17th. Happy St. Patrick's Day, your first spring practice. One of the things that we heard this weekend was that the Merrimack coaching staff is very excited about their quarterback situation and the guys that they brought into the quarterback room. Of course, UMass transfer AJ Hairston headlines the group. But you got a good group there. You also have Jake Attaway, formerly of Hudson High School, who also will be in the mix there. But from what we heard this weekend, the Merrimack coaching staff is really excited about what they have in that quarterback room. And of course, Harvard has already kicked off spring ball. URI is kicking off spring practices a little later than usual because of their field situation. But UNH, they'll be kicking off here in the next few days, as will Maine, as will all of the other programs in the area. Brown is kicking off next week as well, Dartmouth the week after. So spring practices are beginning here in earnest. We'll have previews for all 17 teams in the region, and we'll try to get to as many spring practices as we can as part of our spring visit series. Shifting gears here now, talking high school football real quick, Stone. I wanted to ask you your thoughts on, and we talked about this on Saturday on the way home from the Big New England Clinic, which, by the way, I want to thank Keith Kenyon and his team for another great clinic this year, and I want to thank them for having us again on Saturday. We got a bunch of great content. We're going to be putting all that stuff out in the next week. The content that we got at the clinics the last couple weekends. But I wanted to get your thoughts on the amount of high school head jobs that are open in Massachusetts and in New England, man. It is crazy. We're on top of things. We usually know what jobs are opening up. I can honestly say we can't keep up this year. We can't keep up. There's so many jobs that have either opened up or are opening.
You'll be able to speak to why better than I can, but I think it's two reasons. One, it's parents, and coaches are just sick of dealing with parents that sort of talk out of their ass on a week to week basis. Um, and I think I think it's three things. I think it's time as well, and you know this. It's being a coach in any sport, particularly football, is extremely time consuming. And I think there's a lack of interest at the youth levels, and that's ultimately hurting the numbers in high school. And coaches don't want
Yep.
to kind of deal with it anymore. So I think it's those three things that are ultimately killing a ton of places. Now, there's a lot of places that are open with historically good programs. So this is just sort of a it's time type of thing for a lot of these jobs. But I think a lot of other jobs are for those three reasons as well.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think a lot of it is it's time consuming for one. Being a coach is not easy. It takes its toll on you. You got to have a job that allows you to do it. Takes its toll on you and your family. I think that declining participation is a big problem in sports across the board. I think that a couple of years ago, because of concussions and everything else, I think a lot of people viewed it as a football problem. It's not. It's a sports problem. Kids are not playing sports the way they used to. And I think it's a real issue. And they're specializing now more than ever, which is the other issue. Um, and then I would say that the other thing is, to your point about the parents, yes, parents have made it hard, but I don't think parents are as much of a problem now as they used to be. I don't think parents are the reason why you don't have that many quality coaching candidates out there. I think what you're seeing is a byproduct of what happened about 10, 15 years ago, where you started to see a decline in guys getting into coaching and officiating. Now we're seeing the aftermath of that, where you don't have any quality candidates or even candidates with a reasonable amount of experience that can step into a job and do a good job. And again, to your point about time, it's just a lot of time. It's hard. For me, I always have the itch. I would love to scratch the head coaching itch again. I I I want another shot. I really do. But the reality is, professionally, both in terms of my real job, New England Football Journal, all the stuff I have going on, most importantly, family, it's just not viable. It's just not feasible. And so, what you ultimately look, it creates opportunity for younger guys, but it also puts programs in a tough spot because they're not having success because they're having to hire guys that don't have a lot of experience. So you hope that it's kind of rare to this offseason, and you hope that next offseason you don't have as many openings. But we legitimately cannot keep up with the amount of openings that are out there. Like we literally have to go to Indeed to see if schools have posted jobs. Like
Literally,
that's how bad it is, and we're usually on top of things.
the entire car ride to Newport last Saturday was spent on Indeed looking at high school openings. It really is crazy. I don't ever, in any sport, I've covered a lot of different things over the last 20 years. I don't ever remember seeing anything like this. Like, it's crazy. And I do think time is probably the biggest one out of those three, just because it's so time consuming. But I genuinely think those numbers that are declining, you're now having to go pick kids from JV or
Yeah,
teach
you don't have
skills.
freshmen anymore.
Or
Everybody's playing Froshmore now.
yeah, you're now spending your time teaching skills instead of teaching plays. So
Yeah,
I think that's the biggest thing.
yeah. Before we wrap up here, Rock checks in. He says, "Think Pop can get it done at UMass would be a great story." Yeah, I do, I do, I do, Rock, and he's going to be their starting quarterback. I think, again, Coach Harris Simiak's going to talk about competition and everything else, and I think there will be competition. But I think if they have their brothers, Pop Wilson's their starting quarterback, and if nothing else, and we learned this about William Watson when we covered him, if nothing else, it's going to be fun. It's going to be exciting, and he's got swag for days. So if nothing else, he's going to make UMass football interesting again.
100%. And I do think being at Virginia Tech, you learn some things. It's an ACC
Yep.
school. He's now been in at least, look, he hasn't really necessarily played in a massive environment, but he's at least experienced that Virginia Tech environment to carry that experience over. It's a lot different in Maction on a Tuesday night in Amherst, but nothing's going to phase him. I think that's huge.
Yep. Well, he's had to come out to the greatest entrance in college football, enter Sandman. So, I mean, he's got plenty of experience in terms of having a big game atmosphere. All right, Stone, any final thoughts here before we wrap it up?
No, just to echo your sentiments. To thank you to Keith Kenyon for the Big New England Football Clinic and all his guys. And thank you to Jeremy Springer, who sat down with me on Friday. He did not have to do that after presenting, gave me about 10 minutes. And congratulations to him as well. Obviously, he broke the news to us that he signed a 2-year extension, beyond well deserved. He's been awesome to deal with. We talked about people earlier, and sort of getting to know these guys. He's been fantastic from the jump. Even from the first time we met him when he presented at the Gillette Stadium Clinic, like a week after he got hired. So congrats to him. Thank you to him. And thank you again to Keith Kenyon for a phenomenal weekend. That's always fun down in Newport.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I echo those sentiments. I mentioned Metallica earlier. Friday night, my wife waited in a queue, or whatever you want to call it, in a waiting room with 56,000 other people, and we didn't get tickets. 420,000 tickets were sold for 24 shows at the Sphere in Las Vegas next year. It's crazy. And I used to gatekeep Metallica a lot, but the reality is they're the biggest band in the world. I can't keep them anymore. When a guy like me, who's seen them 14 times and has been a diehard since 1986, can't get tickets, that's when you know that they're big. So we'll see. But nonetheless, I thought I'd share that because it kind of frustrated my weekend until we got to hang out on Saturday. But
I didn't know we were doing Murray's Musings now.
no, we only dedicate. The only band we're ever going to talk about on this show is Metallica. So that's it. I don't want to hear about anybody else, especially your lame ass bands you like Blink-182 and Green Day. So
Well, no, not Green Day anymore.
no, that's right.
You don't have to go down that road, but yeah, I'm a huge Blink guy still.
Yes, Blink-182. If you ever needed to know anything about Kevin Stone, there it is.
I'm a 90s kid. What do you want me to tell you?
Yeah, I'm a 90s kid. All right. Well, that'll do it for this week's episode of the New England Football Show. For Blink-182's biggest fan, Kevin Stone, I'm John Sarianides. We will be back with you next week. Until then, have a great week. Stay safe.